If all of you will please welcome me in joining PhilTown to the stage.
Thank you. All right, let's see if I got a mic. Good. Can you guys hear me over here? Yeah? No? Wave? Good? All right, cool. All right, well, thanks, Scott, and thanks to Ann House for having me come over here. We've come out from Atlanta, and we've got a piece of our company out here. Our investment company is here in Salt Lake, so we're glad to come back into this area. What I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about my journey as an investor and what I think you might be thinking about or should be thinking about as people who are going to be investing in one way or another for the next 30 or 40 years. And I'm going to start with this. When I was 19 years old, I dropped out of college and joined the Army. College wasn't working for me. And I ended up being pretty good at the Army and was in Special Forces for about 3 years. That's the Green Berets, and I served down in Latin America. And when I got out, I was, like many soldiers, pretty disconnected from coming back into civilian life from lots of different kinds of issues, right? PTSD, or just not being familiar with how you do it as a civilian. And so I started trying to go back to school. I basically flunked out of 2 community colleges, so I wasn't very good at it. And I ended up as a river guide down in the Grand Canyon. And I worked down there as a guide 9 months a year, 8 months a year, for 10 years. I lived in a teepee up by Flagstaff, Arizona, had a Harley, and had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, particularly about people that had a lot of money. And in 1980, I took a group of Outward Bound trustees down the Grand Canyon who were all wealthy people. And I don't know if you're familiar with Outward Bound, but it takes the kids who are, a lot of them are in trouble, urban kids, and they put them out into the wilderness for the first time in their lives, and they spend 30 days out there with the outward bound people torturing them, making them do stuff. And I thought, you know, these rich guys have probably never gone through their own program. They've never walked their own talk, right? So let's go make them do it. And I put them in small paddle rafts. This is a 2-week-long trip. They had to paddle all their own gear. We went down 225 miles of very big whitewater. And after the first week, they started to get a little bit tired just as we came into the biggest rapids on the Colorado. And one of the biggest rapids out there, I think it's the most dangerous, is called Crystal. And we're in paddle rafts. Now, usually when we run Crystal, by the way, to get an idea what Crystal is, on a scale of 1 to 10, Crystal is an 11. And I'm serious. They typically walk people around Crystal rather than taking them through on the rafts because it's so dangerous. The river goes straight toward that wall right over there, and then turns hard 90 degrees. It hits that big granite wall, turns hard 90 degrees, and drops 35 feet. And if you go over there, you'll die, because there's this huge hole. It just recirculates horrendously, and boats that are 35 feet long have gone into that hole, been destroyed, people died. So you don't go there. And if you do it right on a rowing boat, you row with a kind of a ferry angle, kind of like that, and you're going past these rocks, and the last big rock, you start pulling, and you try to catch the eddy behind that rock. And if you do it just right, the bow of your boat will be about 10 feet from dropping off a 35-foot ledge. If you do it just wrong, you're going to get in real trouble. So you don't get near that left side of the river. Well, in a paddle boat, you can't do that. You got to go down the river backwards, basically. And I got these 6 guys, 3 on each side, big pile of gear in the middle, heavy boat. And I said, look, when we get down just past this rock, I'm going to yell, hit it, and you guys paddle like your life depends on it, because it does. And so we came down, we got past the last rock, I said, hit it. They paddled really hard, and I immediately knew they did not get us into a position where we were going to catch that eddy, and we were going to go over that thing. So I turned the boat, thinking if maybe we'll hit it straight, only some of us will die, and it won't be me. And we went right up this 20-foot wave, slid along the edge of it, and these guys suddenly got the idea that it wasn't Disneyland, right? They really had to get into it, and they paddled hard and drove the boat. And my thought was, I mean, this is all going really fast, right? My thought was, we're going to go hit that granite wall, and the boat will go up in the air, and we'll flip, and then we'll die. But at least we're going to go over there, not here. So we just drove it, and we came right to the wall, and the boat went up like this and skidded sideways and dropped down the other side. And it turned out there's a granite ledge over there. And we didn't go over the big drop. We just slid down this ledge. And we didn't hardly get wet. So 40 trips down the Grand Canyon, nobody knew that was there, that I knew. So we went around the back of the rapid, we came over to the beach. One of the guys got out of the boat and threw up, so I know he was pretty excited. And this other guy said, "You saved my life." And I said, "Yes, I did." And he goes, "Well, I really owe you." And I'm thinking, I'm going to get a big tip out of this deal. This is going to be great. Because I'm making $4,000 a year, right? I don't have any money. So this guy goes, "Look, I'll tell you what. You feed a man a fish, and I'm not going to give you money." He said, "You feed a man a fish." You guys know that whole thing? Feed a man a fish story? I don't. So he started talking about it, and it just started going right past me because I didn't care about learning to fish. I didn't care about getting money, except just give me a tip. That's all. And he said, "No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you to invest." And I went, "Okay, well, that's great." We went on down the river for 7 days. He's talking to me about learning to be an investor, which I could have cared less about. And then I finished that trip. I went on with the rest of the season. And then in November, I did what I usually do, which is I'm hanging out, freezing my butt off in Flagstaff in a barn. And I remembered this guy told me I could come to La Jolla, California, and hang out with him, and he would show me what he was talking about. So I did it to get warm, went down to La Jolla, spent 2 weeks with him, and in that 2-week period, he convinced me to leave my job as a river guide after 10 years and join him as an apprentice to this guy and learn to do the stuff I'm going to show you guys. And I spent a year working my ass off, cleaning toilets, sweeping floors, and looking over this guy's shoulder. And at the end of a year, I left, and I started with $1,000, and I did what I'd learned, and about 5 years later, I was a millionaire. So I'm going to show you guys what you can do as a river guide. By the way, this is me as a young lieutenant in Special Forces, and this is me with an attitude a few years later as a river guide, and this is what that rapid looks like. These guys are doing it right. They're not in trouble. They're actually in the right place. We went around that thing on the other side, which was crazy. So here's what we're going to talk about. Radical change of social systems through investing. And what I really want you to understand is that we want to walk our talk, and we want to end up with some money in our life. That's basically the two things we want to do. So we're going to talk about that today. The thing that I want to start with, though, is that you've got to be thinking, if you're going to be thinking about making money, the way I learned to do it, you have to think about your values versus the values of any business that you're looking at. So we want to connect those two things. So here's a list of things that you might want to think about if you want to take a couple notes. This comes from John Mackey, who's the chairman of the board of Whole Foods and the founder of Whole Foods, who wrote a book called Conscious Capitalism. And his idea is that capitalism is basically bullshit. Can I speak like that in this student union, or is that bad? All right. I'm just going to speak like I do. Otherwise I'll get embarrassed and forget what I'm going to say. So capitalism is fundamentally bullshit unless you apply values to it. That is moral values. You have to have a moral conscience, or capitalism will allow you to destroy the world. We've seen a lot of world destroying going on. A lot of people right now run corporations who are Harvard Business School graduates, and they are jerks. They're completely bad people who clawed their way to the top of these corporations and don't deserve to be in the leadership position they're in because they're not leaders. I learned about leadership in a very harsh school called the Infantry School of Leadership, Fort Benning, Georgia, where they teach you as a young 21-year-old, 19-year-old, that your leadership style has to be your people are first, you're last. Right? That's how they think about leadership in the Army. Your people are first. That means they got to sleep first. They got to eat first. You know about this, right? So you've got to treat them way better than you're going to treat yourself. So you sleep last, you eat last, you clean your equipment last. And by the way, when the bullets start flying, you go first, not last. Right? That's how it works. So in other words, you're going to be the most in danger, and you're going to be the least taken care of. And that's your job as a leader. That's what's expected. That's not how they do it in business school. They don't teach anything like that. They teach you to manage, which is a word that comes from the Greek word about manacle, control, right? They don't say anything about selflessness at all to these people. They're in it for the money, many of them. They're greedy bastards, many of them. Unbelievably, the things they do. They take their employees, chop their salaries, give them poor working conditions, and then give themselves a raise for doing it. I don't know if you guys are aware of any of this. Are you familiar with what's going on out there in the real world? How many of you got a clue about what's going on in corporations out there, just out of curiosity? Okay, 3 of you, great. The rest of you, pay attention, because I'm going to tell you some things that are true that you may not know. One of them is that CEOs are now paying themselves $20 million a year at an average rate of 300 times more than their average employee. When in 1980, the same companies run by people with a moral conscience were paying themselves 40 times their average employee's salary. So they have managed to raise their compensation without any justification whatsoever from 40 times an average guy to 400, almost 400, which is morally bankrupt. And they've got a game going on in public corporations, and they're getting away with it. And they're getting away with it for one really important reason. Because you let them. You, meaning the 99%ers who are turning their money over in the form of index funds, mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, to Wall Street, where they then take the money and amorally hand it over to these bastards who are running these companies. So what I want you to do is I want you to start thinking about money as a vote. It's something that you have as a vote to vote for what the future is going to be like down the road 10, 20 years from now. Those votes that you're making come in 2 pieces with your money. Number one, when you're buying stuff, you're voting for that company. So if you go down there to just some, Joe six-pack, grocery store and you're buying their stuff, you're voting for that store. You go down to Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, something like that, you're voting for that store. You buy organic, you're voting for organic farmers. You buy junk out of a can, you're voting for Del Monte. So wherever you spend your money, those are votes for the future down 20 years from now. The other place where you vote your money is where you give it to be invested. If you're not going to invest it yourself as you go through your life, you'll be putting money into things. Those things are often called 401k programs, IRA programs, Keogh plans, defined benefit plans. And these plans are typically administered by people who are paid to do that job, who then turn the money over to the same bastards who could care less. And they're going to go out there and run your money. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, I have a set of values. This is what I mean by walking your talk. You guys are students. Many of you have values, and you're talking a lot about social consciousness. You're talking about justice. You're talking about fairness. You're doing a lot of talking, but you don't have any skin in the game. When you start getting skin in the game, what I want to teach you guys about is putting the skin in the game and managing it with your own value system, not giving it to somebody else who doesn't care what your values are. So the first thing is, do you like the way the business treats its employees? Do you like the way the CEO is handling things? Because John Mackey says that the employees are as much a stakeholder in that company as the people who own it. And the people who own it are obviously the shareholders, right? The shareholders are the owners of the business, and that's who are typically focused on by management. But management also has to focus on the customers. Are you delivering products that we want to see in the world? Do you want to see more of this, or do you want to see more of that? Which way do you want to go, right? Warren Buffett loves Coca-Cola. He drinks 6 to 8 cans of Coke a day. Coca-Cola may be one of the more responsible parties in delivering childhood obesity, diabetes, just a wave of illness coming from drinking too much sugar, right? It's an addictive product. So Buffett loves it. So that's his value system. So he's voting his money with billions of dollars for Coca-Cola. So what if you only have $100? What difference does it make, right? Well, Warren Buffett has billions, but you as a group have 85% of the money invested in the stock market. 85% comes out of IRAs, Keoghs, 401ks. Most of the money in the market is little guy money. So as a group, if we voted it in one direction, that direction would be what everybody does. No choice at all. All right? We're way bigger than Buffett. So customers, what kind of products are going on? What are the owners doing to, or what are the people doing for the owners? What are the suppliers doing? Does this company treat its suppliers well? I'll give you another example. Walmart, which is run by some really amazing bastards, Walmart only has one value set, and that is the cheapest prices in town. Low price, right? You want to look what a company's values are. There's its sign, low price. Great. So now let's say, oh, you think that's a great value. Poor people, low price, good stuff. $10 hammers instead of $40 hammers. That's awesome for everybody. Cheap underwear, cheap clothing, cheap food. But you ever think about what happens down on the supply line when you're busy buying your cheap T-bone steak or your cheap piece of pork? Where's that coming from? All right? Why is it cheaper there than it would be, let's say, over at Whole Foods? Well, because Walmart takes its buying power, goes over to Smithfield, which makes pork, and says to them, okay, if you want to keep supplying us with pork so we don't go buy it from China or from whoever, you want to keep doing American pork out of Nebraska, great, we'll keep buying your pork, but you got to lower your price. And Smithfield said, we can't lower our price anymore. There's no way to lower our price. And Walmart says, too bad, you're going to lose all our business, which is a huge chunk of what Smithfield does. So the Smithfield geniuses got together and they said, okay, well, what we need to do here is we need to put these hogs into a container so that they don't go outside anymore, because that's expensive to have hogs running around. So we're just going to take the hogs and stick them in a crate the size of a coach seat, and yeah, they're 250-pound hog in a coach seat, and we're going to leave them there for 2 years. All right? Now, in order for the hog to not die of mental illness in the coach seat, locked up for 2 years, we're going to inject it with every kind of antibiotic we can get our hands on. And son of a gun, they made it cheaper, right? They made it cheaper. And so when you go down to Walmart and you buy that stuff cheap, you are paying for some massive, heinous crap going on out there on the supply chain, because those executives don't care. So when you're voting with your money, you're voting for that kind of stuff. That literally went on out there at Smithfield, goes on to this day. So you'd think somebody would get their hands on that and they would make a big stink about it with these hogs in coach seats in a crate, never touching the ground their whole lives. And sure enough, some really enterprising young students got cameras, and they went and got a job at Smithfield and got into that plant with a camera. And they videoed this horrible stuff going on, right? And they came out with the film. And so you know what Nebraska did? The government of Nebraska, responding to this heinous stuff, this video, well, they did what they would do when you're dealing with companies that have a lot of power. They made it illegal for you to go into a plant and film unless you had the permission of that company. It's now a felony in Nebraska to do what those students did. They fixed the problem. No more film. And that's what's going on out there in that world that your parents voted for with their money. Now, you can keep playing the game like that, but I think there's something in the world called karma. I don't know about you. It's involved in some version in every religion I ever read about, right? Christian religion, it talks about you reap what you sow. Hindu religion, they talk about karma. What goes around comes around. You guys familiar with that? How many of you think that may be a law? Just curious. Just curious. How many of you don't raise your hand no matter what I ask you? You're not raising your hand for anything. Exactly. You're not raising your hand for that either. Going on. What's this company doing in the community? What are they doing to the city that they live in? What are they doing to Flint, Michigan when GM rips its plant right out of there without retraining people, without taking any social responsibility whatsoever for the employees in that company? And who's responsible for that, right? The CEO of GM, surely he is, right? But what about the shareholders of GM? What about the people who don't give a shit? They just go in there and say, make me money. And that's your parents. And that's going to be you unless you learn a different way to do this. What about the environment? You know, there's been a lot of noise about making the environment a better place. Every company out there should be trying to make the environment a better place every single day. Nobody's perfect. We don't expect them to be perfect. Maybe we still need coal, but make it better every day, right? That's all I expect from a company. But we got companies that don't care. This looks like somebody's wish list on a mission statement, and they all write this stuff up, and it's almost all bullshit. They don't do what they say they're going to do. But you need to do what you say is important. You need to vote your values with your money. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to do that today, especially if I can get my clicker to work. Here's the thing. The problem is the next generation of executives are coming out, and they don't know any of this stuff because nobody's teaching this at business school. Let me show you what they teach at business school. They teach modern portfolio theory. Number of things that says modern portfolio theory says is, number one, investors are rational. That is, they're voting with huge amounts of money for this company or that company. They're rational when they do that. Second, because they're rational, price equals value. In other words, a rational person isn't going to pay $100 for a company that's worth $50, and they're not going to sell it for $50 if it's worth $100. Does that make sense to you guys? You understand these people are smart people. They're smarter than you. Okay? They got into the best business schools. They got magna cum laude out of their undergrad degree. They're the valedictorian of their high school. They're the smartest people on the planet that are running these funds, and this is what they're trained to do. And they believe that price equals value. Risk and reward are related. You can't get a high rate of return without taking a lot of risk. That's a fundamental of modern portfolio theory. And finally, because of these first things, nobody can beat the market. Okay, fair enough. That's modern portfolio theory. This is Eugene Fama. He got a Nobel Prize for modern portfolio theory. He said, I'd compare stock pickers, that is, people who are trying to pick stocks like I do, like Warren Buffett does, Charlie Munger. We pick stocks. We pick individual companies by voting our values. Like I said, Warren votes for Coke. I don't. I voted for Whole Foods right up until Amazon bought it. He said, I'd compare people like PhilTown to astrologers, but I don't want to badmouth astrologers. Okay, so Fama hates me. By the way, he's a professor at University of Chicago. This is Burton Malkiel, professor emeritus at Princeton. He wrote a book called Random Walk on Wall Street, and he said a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a newspaper's financial pages could select a portfolio that would do just as well as one carefully selected by experts. Okay, Malkiel, professor of economics, Princeton. Here's his book. It's still in print. It's called A Random Walk Down Wall Street by Burton Malkiel, and in it, he was an honest broker of the idea of modern portfolio theory. He wrote it in 1973. It's a classic. And in it, he said, we got to deal with a problem, and the problem's name is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has slaughtered the stock market rates of return. In 1973, he'd slaughtered it for about 20 years nonstop, right? Averaging about 36% a year, killing the market. So Malkiel said, we got to talk about that, because if you can't beat the market, how can there be a Warren Buffett? If price is value, nobody can beat the market. If you got to take more risk to get a higher rate of return, okay, well, the first answer is Buffett must be taking tremendous amount of risk. But then Malkiel evaluated his portfolio over the last 20 years and found out that Buffett's level of risk by modern portfolio theory standards was lower than the S&P 500. In other words, lower than just diversifying across the entire market. So he wasn't taking more risk. He was actually taking less risk and slaughtering the market, which is a violation of modern portfolio theory. So Malkiel said, all right, well, wait a second. There's got to be an answer to this. And he came up with the answer. He said, imagine that you have a game where it's 50-50 odds whether you're going to win or lose, like flipping coins. So heads, tails, 50-50. And imagine you have a universe of monkeys who are flipping coins. If we stay there for long enough, every single monkey is going to have half heads, half tails over however long they do it. But if we look at it at a short period of time, we might discover that one monkey in some part of the universe has hit 100 heads in a row, which seems impossible. But there's this one monkey. He said, what we're hearing at when we hear that is that we're looking at a bell curve of any random system, which has a 50-50 probability right in the center of the curve, and then you have these long tails that come out here where this stuff happens. You have extreme odds against it happening, but it happens. And so, in fact, in a random universe, you would predict there would be a monkey someplace flipping coins 100 heads in a row. It would be weird if it didn't happen in a perfectly random universe. Price equals value. You have a 50-50 market. In other words, price is going to move until up or down with whatever news happens until it's a 50-50 probability to go up or go down. So this is a random market. Therefore, you would expect somebody is going to have Warren Buffett-sized returns way out on the tail. Way out on the tail. So it makes sense, right? So, okay, he wrote basically that Warren Buffett was a lucky monkey flipping coins. And Buffett heard about this and responded with a speech he gave at Columbia University Business School. And in it, what he said was, yeah, he said, I could be a lucky monkey. How would I know? I just think I'm doing it right. And maybe a friend of mine who's over in Boston might be a lucky monkey too. Right? We just happen to be two lucky monkeys. He said, but imagine this scenario. What if you found that every single monkey that was lucky at flipping coins and getting 100 heads in a row were all in the same zoo? Would that be random anymore? What do you guys think? Is that random? No. You'd be like, something's going on with the data, or these monkeys are getting fed weird stuff. There's something happening here. And Buffett said he went out and made a study of all of the investors who followed the same principles he's followed for all of his investing career. He brought that to Columbia and he ran it out for everybody, about 20 investors. And he found that the range of return of this group of investors was running from 18% per year compounded to 36% per year compounded over a 20-year period, fully audited. And none of them were buying the same stocks as any other one. They were all just following the same strategy that Buffett got taught by Ben Graham. I'm going to teach you guys here, but I'm going to have to go fast, okay? So I hope you can keep up. So try this. The stock market is rational, so price and value are the same. Is that true or false? Modern portfolio theory in every university in America teaches that it's true. Okay? This is Robert Shiller. He just got the 2013 Nobel Prize in Economics. He said the stock market is often irrational. Prices and values are often disconnected. What we're seeing here, you guys, is that Nobel Prizes were awarded from 1970s, 80s, and 90s to people who were pitching modern portfolio theory. And then in 2000, the theory started coming apart as one young economist after another blew holes in it. And now these guys are getting the Nobel Prizes. This is Richard Thaler, University of Chicago, 2017 Nobel Prize in Economics. Market is made up of humans. Humans are driven by emotion. Thus, the market is emotional. The market can't be emotional if modern portfolio theory is true. So modern portfolio theory can't be true. Warren Buffett's been saying this for 50 years. Price is just what you paid. Value is what you got. All right? So modern portfolio theory is wrong, and it's rapidly being proven wrong. Next, you have to take a high risk to get a high return. Is that true? Do you have to take a high risk to get a high return? What do you guys think? Buffett said risk and reward are not necessarily related. Risk is just not understanding what you're doing, right? This is University of Nevada, Las Vegas study of following Buffett. If all you did was just follow what Buffett did, about a month after he did it, it got announced publicly, you went and did the same thing. This is how you would have done if you'd started with $5,000 each year. You would have compounded your money at over 20% a year, and after this, right now, up to 2006, you would have made $18.5 million, right? With less risk than putting your money in a mutual fund. So that's simply not true. You can get very high rates of return with low risk. Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, said, if smart guys on Wall Street didn't believe so many stupid things, we wouldn't be rich. Plain and simple, what they believe is wrong. Buffett once said he wished he could probably endow universities so they would, to a chair, to someone who would teach modern portfolio theory forever, because it's so much fun to compete against people who have a wrong theory. Diversification. Actually, diversification is just protection against ignorance. It makes little sense if you know what you're doing. When you put your money in a mutual fund, into an index, into an exchange-traded fund, you're diversifying. The people that are running that fund do not know how to invest. It's that simple. Charlie said this, instead of waiting for a bargain and loading up, you diversify. To me, that's totally insane. If you have such a system, you're being played for a sucker. And that's exactly what they're doing with those administrative 401ks and IRAs, is they're playing you all for suckers. This is Warren Buffett's portfolio, the best investor in the world. This is how diversified he is. He's got 74% of his portfolio in 7 stocks. All right? Not only this, but matching your values and your money is not what they teach you about how to invest, is it? Your values aren't part of the game at all. Applied modern portfolio theory says what you do is just diversify with indexes, ETFs, and mutual funds. You dollar cost average in by investing all the time, feeding Wall Street your money. You buy and hold, don't ever take it out, because otherwise we wouldn't make as much money if you take your money away, and no one can beat the market, so don't try. That's what they teach you, and it's all wrong. This is how your 401k and your IRA is invested. Since 1985, only 4% of all of those fund managers have even beaten the index. This is the S&P 500. This is Fidelity Magellan. This guy's getting paid $4 million a year to beat that index right there. Right there. He's the same thing as the index. He's just doing the index. This is Growth Fund of America. Looks identical to the index. T. Rowe Price Blue Chip looks identical to the index. This is Merrill Lynch's Growth Fund, right? This is Merrill Lynch Growth. Growth, right? There's the index. So Wall Street got a hold of this and they said, you know what? We ought to take a look at that and see if we can get somebody that knows nothing about investing, have him pick ping pong balls out of a bucket, and see if he can beat the fund managers. And he beat him 2 years in a row. They wrote up a big article about it in the Wall Street Journal. This guy, this chimp, killed Wall Street 2 straight years. This is Jack Meyer. The mutual fund business is a giant scam, no doubt about it. He runs Harvard's endowment. This is Jack Bogle, who runs Vanguard. He said mutual fund fees will cost your clients, that would be you guys, if you're investing now in mutual funds all the way through your career, they will cost you about 60% of the value of your retirement over your investing life. Warren Buffett, people get nothing for their money from professional mutual fund managers. Charlie Munger, the finance industry is 5% rational people and 95% shamans and faith healers. Now, I got to tell you, I'm kind of getting into the teeth of some of your professors here at the University of Utah right now. I mean, they don't really necessarily believe this, and they're probably maybe not going to teach this, but Charlie's pretty outspoken, right? He's a billionaire. He became a billionaire from learning with the things I'm going to show you guys. And he believes what he's saying. 95% of those guys are out there. They know what they're doing is bullshit, and they're doing it anyway because they're good at the math. True or false? No one beats the market in the long run. You guys think that's true? Do you think there are people out there who kill the market? Let's take a look. Certain kinds of investors have been killing the market for 80 years. These guys are all got audited financial statements going back a minimum of 20 years. Look at those rates of return right there, right? So here's 3 different ways you can invest money. Here's number 1. Put your money in real estate. And on the average, over time, real estate has managed to give a 13 times return on investment on a $30,000 investment since 1965. So you'd have 30,000 goes in. Right now you have 400 grand. Pretty decent. This is putting your money in ETFs, mutual funds, and indexes. You would now have $3 million. Your 30,000 would have gone up 100 times by just sticking your money in the market, not paying any fees, buy SPY, and you're done. Okay? And this is what happens when you do what I do. This is what happens to $30,000. You end up with $393 million, 10,000 times what you started with. So which one are you going to focus on in the future, right? Which one are you going to focus on? So this is the super investors that Buffett was talking about. By the way, that guy right there next to Buffett, what's that guy's name? Bill Gates? Who do you think Bill Gates' teacher is when it comes to investing? It's Warren Buffett, right? He also taught this guy, Guy Spear. Guy became multi-millionaire. He's over in Zurich. We're friends. He wrote a phenomenal book, by the way, called The Education of a Value Investor, about how you do this kind of stuff. This is Joel Greenblatt, another phenomenal investor making 50% a year. You can be a stock market genius. This is David Einhorn. He's in the World Poker Tournament. David started about 15 years ago, 20 years ago now, with nothing, and now he owns the New York Mets. This is Monesh Pabrai, and I'm standing there with Monesh with my daughter Danielle. She wrote our last book together with me called Invested. Monesh wrote a book called The Dondo Investor. By the way, I don't see you guys writing any of this stuff down. Are you writing this down or taking pictures or doing something? I'm showing you maybe the 5 most important books you could ever read if money is at all important to you. And most of you are just sitting there going, wow, this is cool. Okay. Dondo Investor. Dondo Investor. Monesh Pabrai is a multi-millionaire, lives up in Irvine, California, phenomenal investor. We're all there to see Warren Buffett. There's Monesh right there. And Charlie Munger, this guy right here, manages a multi-billion-dollar fund of Saudi Arabian money. 400 people are sitting in that room, like a room like this, and we're all there just to watch Charlie. Yeah. Oh, you kind of want to watch we're going to write those down now. All right, good. Here we go. All right, first, education of a value investor. This is Guy Spear's story of going out of, Oxford education, right? Harvard Business School, top of his class, gets a job with the most prestigious investment bank, and becomes one of the bastards who are out there amorally investing money. All he's interested in doing is just money, money, money. greed, 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 and he feels like something's wrong with his life. So he gets a bunch of money, and he meets this guy named Mohnish Pabrai, and Mohnish says, let's have lunch with Warren Buffett. And they say, how do we do that? He says, well, Buffett's running an auction. Let's go bid on it to have lunch with him. And they bid, and they bid, and they bid, and they ended up bidding $1 million cash. And they went out and had lunch with Buffett, and it changed this guy's life into a totally different kind of investor. He's extremely successful. Education of a Value Investor is one of the best books I've ever read. You Can Be a Stock Market Genius tells you about how Joel works with companies that are buying back their own stock or doing spin-offs to make a fortune. This is fooling some of the people all of the time. David Einhorn talking about how the SEC, just a bunch of bastards that are so ridiculously stupid that he showed them that Allied Capital was conducting fraud in its books, showed them exactly how they were doing it, and instead of investigating Allied, they investigated him. Standard government crap, right? This is Dondo investor, Mohnish, talking about the Patel family and how they use the meme of getting wealthy that's been in the family for 200 years. A Patel family member came to America in the 1960s, being driven out of Uganda in the purge of Indians that Idi Amin did. He brought his family here with a couple $1,000s, and today that family owns 40% of the hotels in America. It's a hell of a story, okay? And these guys are all there just to see Charlie Munger, who's 95 years old now. These guys, including me. So, more super investors. This is Jack Wayland. He turned $10,000 into $574,000 so far, 31% per year. This is Sue Wolf, 100 grand to 590, 22%. Adam Thompson, 50,000 is now 4.2. What I'm doing is I'm trying to blow up the notion that people don't beat the market. These are ordinary people, right? You don't have to have an IQ of 160 to beat the market. You just have to know the basic rules of how to do it. 24% a year. Mike Koza, 28%. Pam Ewell, 29% per year. Justin Uhar is a truck driver. He's doing this while driving a truck full-time, turned $87,000 into $4.7 million, 33% per year return. These are all people I'm teaching. This is me a couple of weeks ago up in Calgary to a bunch of students there. This is the first class we ever did on this stuff in Singapore. In 2009, we went over there, and at the end of class, the students all picked 10 companies. Those companies competed against the S&P 500 up to today. And as of right now, the S&P's up 7% per year, compounded, 87% overall, and $100,000 has become $186,000. So if you just put your money in an index, that's where you'd be right now. That class group, as a group, now is up to $671,000, 572% return, 22% per year, just by finding 10 good companies. Actually, a couple of them almost went under. But just getting a good bunch of companies and understanding what they're looking at. If you were to do that, instead of making 5% a year and turning, $1,000 starting point and $5,000 a year that you're saving, 40 years from now it'll be 600 grand, and you'll manage to save about, I don't know, my guess is you'll live 3 years in retirement or so. That'll be it. You'll be done. 600,000 will be gone. Instead, 22% a year, you got $67 million. So which one do you want to do? Which one do you want to learn? Which one do you want to believe? Right? You want to go 5%, be starving when you're 70 years old, or try to go 22%. The problem is most people don't believe in 22% at all. They don't believe it's possible. You're going to have everybody who you talk to about this later tell you that's impossible. If you could do that, everybody would be doing it. Well, I just showed you a whole bunch of people who are doing it. But of course, most people are not, and most people who tell you you can't don't know, right? They just know they can't do it, okay? Here's what Buffett said about educating yourself to invest. To invest successfully, you need not understand beta, efficient markets, modern portfolio theory, option pricing, or emerging markets. You may, in fact, be better off knowing nothing of these. That, of course, is not the prevailing view at most business schools, whose finance curriculum tends to be dominated by such subjects. In our view, though, investment students need only 2 well-taught courses. 1, how to value a business, and 2, how to think about market prices. I'm going to give you the crash course in both those things right now. Buffett's checklist is 4 pieces long. Try to write this down, okay? First thing, be capable of understanding the business you invest in. Do not try to invest on your own. without buying companies that you already understand very well, which means you're going to limit down the number of things you're looking at severely. There's 11,000 public stocks out there. You're going to be looking for 20, okay, that you really do understand. Second, you're going to look for intrinsic characteristics that make it durable. This is called a moat. It's a way of protecting the company against competition. You have to know the moat. Apple Computer has a huge moat called an ecosystem. In other words, they have what's known as a switching moat. Once I'm locked into an Apple Watch, an Apple iPad, an Apple iPhone, an Apple notebook, an Apple home computer, I'm not changing. I'm sticking with Apple, even if it's not the cutting edge stuff, because it's too big of a problem to switch. That's an ecosystem. It all works together, and I like it for that, okay? The CEO needs to have talent and integrity. We hope they do. And finally, we want a fair price with a margin of safety. Those four things, if you exercise them, will make you rich. We asked Charlie, why don't they teach this in business school? And he said, this is literally what he said. He says, because it's too easy. It's too easy. There it is. What would you have to do the rest of the semester? Which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because unwrapping this stuff, it goes pretty deep. What do you have to know to understand the business? Buffett says you have to understand the business is a fat pitch for you. Let's talk about a little bit about what that means. So here is what he's saying. Most important thing, if you're going to do this on your own and go for those high rates of return, is to be able to define which companies you can make an intelligent decision about. What Buffett was just saying, he's a very smart guy, is that he's not going to try to make an intelligent decision about a computer company, because it's not his area. Chewing gum, he's very comfortable with. Okay? Me, I like Chipotle burritos and Harley-Davidson motorcycles. I'm real comfortable with stuff like that. And I'm going to stick to what we call our circle of competence and stay way away from the edges, because I can buy plenty of companies throughout my whole life, staying away from problems I don't understand. Right? Here's the art of hitting. Just looking at Ted Williams right there. There's the strike zone Williams was talking about. And here's Buffett. Wait for your fat pitch. The trick in investing is just sit there and watch pitch after pitch go by and wait for the right one, right in your sweet spot. And if people are yelling, swing you bum, just ignore them. So if you're wondering why don't other professionals do this, it's because they've got other investors who've given them money and they're standing there yelling, swing you bum. Swing now. You got to swing every day or I'm taking my money back. How many of you saw the movie The Big Short? Anybody here see that? Remember Michael Burry in that movie? The guy with the drums, heavy metal, and he made a bet that the bonds based on subprime mortgages were going to go down. He made a huge bet with other people's money. And those guys were coming into his office threatening to kill him if he didn't give them their money back. And he refused because he had the contractual right to hang on to the money. So he kept spending it on insurance policies. And when those finally paid off 3 years later, he made $3 billion. And he made those guys richer. And they hated him for it because they wanted their money back. So if you sit there and do nothing, you're not going to be able to sit there and do nothing long before you're fired as a fund manager. You have to swing, but Buffett doesn't. And that's the difference between you and professionals. Second difference is the three most important words of investing are margin of safety. Buffett bought this building, and he buys almost every company just like you buy a piece of real estate with what's called a 10 cap or 10 capitalization. Now, this is a standard in real estate buying where you're going to look at what we call the owner earnings of a building. So you got the revenue, you got the expenses, and what you got left you can put in your pocket if you own it all by yourself, right? This is before income tax and before you're going to, add on 10 units to try to grow it and make it bigger. This is just standard real estate. What's the revenue minus the running of the building? What do you have left? And what you have left, whatever that is, multiply by 10, and that's the price you should pay for that thing. Straight up, so simple. It's called the 10 cap rule. So he paid that for this building. He got that for a 10. Now, why 10 cap? Because you're going to get a 10% return on your investment starting year one if you buy the thing with a 10% yield right off the bat, right? So if you say, I've got $1,000 coming off of this net in my pocket, times 10, I can pay $10,000 for it. If I've got $1 million coming off, times 10, I can pay $10 million for it. What does that mean? I've got a 10% yield that first year. I'm going to make $1 million. I paid $10 million, 10% yield. 10% yield's good enough if you know going down the road this thing will be more productive in the future. He bought this farm the same exact way. So when we value a business, here's the 4 things we want to know. Will it be more productive in 10 years? Can I estimate the owner earnings, which are not a GAAP accounting? You're going to love this one, huh? It's not GAAP accounting. So, and GAAP accounting is going to hell, by the way. They have changed some GAAP accounting rules now that make it almost crazy what's going to happen with net earnings. So estimate the owner earnings, require a 10% yield on the purchase price that you pay for the business, and then calculate the purchase price from there. 10x, 10 times the owner earnings. Couldn't be simpler, you guys, and if you follow that rule, you will always be buying companies that are really good to own. You can keep them your whole life. You'll have tremendous cash flow coming off of them, and you'll do it like Buffett. Now, the second thing he said you got to do, that's how you value a business. Second thing is market prices. What we're trying to do is we're basically trying to buy $10 of value for $5. How could that be possible if we've got a bunch of smart people out there who would not sell us a $10 bill for $5? So let me give you a brief demonstration of what seems to be irrational. I've got a $20 bill here, and I'm going to sell it for $10 to the first person that gets off your ass and gives me $10. You guys are a bunch of morons. You're actually sitting there with one guy who has $4 in his pocket. No way can he buy this at all, but at least he's trying. You are awesome. I'm just going to give you $20. Here, wait, come here. Did you have $10? Okay, you can sit down. Did you get a good deal? Are you sure? Okay, go sit down. All right, there. Give me the $10. Hey, wait a second, man. Give me the 4 ones anyway. Give me your money. Oh, my God. You guys are pretty horribly awful. I'm going to do this till you get it. I'm going to sell another 20 for $10, except you can't buy it if you already did this. Give me, yeah, that's it right there. There you go. Jeez, awesome, man. This is really, really hard to figure out, isn't it? Some of you are just sitting there going, what's just happened? You know there's 3 kinds of people in the world, right? People who make it happen, like that guy right there. He had $4 to his name, and he went up and tried to buy something that cost 10, and he got away with it. Okay? He just made it happen. You're going to do well, my friend. You're competing against these people. You're in good shape, all right? There are people who wonder, yeah. Where did you get the money? You borrowed it. Man alive, he borrowed, $10? Like from some mafia usurious hitman over there. How much did you pay him? You paid him $6? You paid him, so the interest rate was 60% for 30 seconds. You're going to jail, my friend. You're going to do great, and then you're going to go to jail. I'll see you in the jail. All right, I got another one. I'm just going to, you guys are so. You're sitting there going, this can't be real. Okay, 3 kinds of people. 1, you make it happen, right? 2, you watch it happen. 3, you wonder, what just happened? And that's several of you right now are sitting there going, what just happened? All right, $50 for 20, and if you already did the deal with me, you can't come up here. 20. Boom! You were waiting for that one. Give him a hand. You guys are frickin' geniuses. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You're going to learn one day. You got to move when it's time. Now you're camping out. What do you got? A ticket? Sit down.
H&M, bro.
I don't care about the H&M, bro. Here's the thing you got to learn. In the real world out there, they don't feel you. They don't give a shit about you. Truth is, right? And when it comes to stuff like this, they're going to run over you with a bulldozer. I'm going to sell this to somebody that's got a 50. Is there a 50 in here? No, not you. You already won. I want a 50. 50. 50. 50. Is that a 50? Is that a 50? You have an exact 50. Are you going to wait for her to take this away from you? You are, aren't you? You're so polite. You are just going to fail in life. You're going to fail. Go sit down. Oh, never mind. Look, I'm going to do something that's horrible. I'm going to give you a lesson that is going to teach you that you could just be a nice person and still get away with it. There's 50. Go sit down. No more. You guys are morons. All right. I could do this all day, and there'd still be half of you going, what's going on? What's going on? I don't understand. All right? Well, I'm going to teach you some more about this. How is it possible? Because people do dumb shit all the time for all kinds of reasons, okay? All kinds of reasons. So I'm going to give you the reasons why a fund manager will sell me a great company worth $10 a share for $5. He'll do it because he knows over the next year or two, it ain't going up, baby. It's at $5 right now. It's not going to 10 for a year or two. And a year or two to a fund manager is effing forever. Forever. They're judged monthly, quarterly, annually. And if they're not keeping up with the Joneses, the other fund managers, they're toast. And if they know that stock's not going up, they're not putting it in their portfolio. There's no way. But if I know in 5 years it's going to be worth 5 times what I'm going to pay for it, I'll do that deal all day. Why? Because I've got control of my money. They don't have control of their money. But you do. You got control of your money, right? You have control of your money in your wallet right now. Did you have money in your wallet? But you have, look around. Who at the table has money in their wallet? Do any of you have any money? You do. Could you have asked her to borrow some money and then come up here? Huh? Well, no. She's a usurious lender. You don't need to know her. You don't even know if she's a nice person. You don't care. You're just going to borrow some money. How is this possible? It's the real world. That's how it's possible. And fund managers become afraid if stocks aren't going to move in a year. If they become afraid, okay? So, because some big event happened to this company, a big event. My simple rule dictates my buying. Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. We live by that, all right? This is a Macondo well in the Gulf of Mexico blowing up, killing people. BP, Halliburton, and Transocean are the 3 perps. But every other company in the Gulf of Mexico sold off its stock down 50%. We just went out and bought a good one, had nothing to do with that well, and 9 months later doubled our money. Okay? This is the Fukushima meltdown in Japan. Thought, I like nuclear power. It's clean. Okay? You might hate it, so don't vote for that, right? So I jumped in there and I bought a Canadian company called Cameco that provides uranium for nukes. Boom, price goes down like a brick. We buy the company, and the price keeps going down for a ways. We just keep buying it, and eventually it starts to go up. This is the Arab Spring, which creates a big panic around Egyptian cotton. So all of a sudden, T-shirt companies are freaking out. They're going to be paying $2, $3 a pound for cotton instead of 50 cents. Now they're not going to make any money, right? Except that I know that within a year or two, cotton prices will go back to normal because Georgia will plant cotton all day long until prices go down. So they're going to be normalized within a couple of years. Gildan, great Canadian company, gets sold off from 45 down to 15. We buy it at $15 a share. It went to 30 in 6 months. It's at 60 now. I mean, this is not rocket science. Goldman Sachs, one of the best companies in the world, was on sale for 75% of its net cash. Come on, man, that's bankrupt, depression-era pricing. We go in there and buy Goldman because everybody's afraid of the Greek bonds. Right? Here's Lehman Brothers, totters, Wall Street crashes, 2008, the news headlines are front page everywhere. We're going into a financial crisis, and stocks go on sale all over the place. I go on CNBC, I'm saying, get the heck out. We don't know how far this is going to go down. I'm out with the rest of them, right? I don't know how long this is going to last. What I'm doing is I got a shopping list, and I'm waiting for that list to go on sale. Went back on the air a year and a half later, said I'm loading up the truck. And this is about a year after that.
How can investors make a profit in these uncertain times? So let's get some answers with PhilTown, author of Payback Time. It's good to see you.
Scott.
Phil, you called it right. You knew when to get out of this market and when to get back in, that being last March. Yep. You're the man with the plan.
So these guys were basically saying, you know, why aren't you famous, right? But I'm not into that, right? I'm just into going on the air once in a while when I think the market's really going to crumble and letting people know. That year, our fund was up 56% that year, and number 1 fund in America. So what about now? What's going on right now? And then we'll wrap up. First, Carl Icahn is saying that those indexes you guys are investing in or your parents are investing in have created a huge bubble with liquidity problems, and it's going to be one of the major drivers of the next crisis. Warren Buffett's annual letter a year ago, on page 4, he said every decade or so, dark clouds will fill economic skies and will briefly rain gold. When downpours of that sort occur, it's imperative we rush outdoors carrying wash tubs, not teaspoons. What he's talking about is that every 10 years we have a big recession in the range of 5 to 10 years. We're in our 10th year without one now. Okay? So Buffett is saying, I'm getting up a big wash tub. This is what the wash tub looks like for Buffett. He now has at that point in time a year ago, 100 billion. He now has over 116 billion in cash waiting to go into the market and buy stuff. This is Jim Rogers, phenomenal billionaire. He said, mark the day and hold me to it. The worst crash in modern history is coming in the next 18 months. That was 6 months ago or 8 months ago. So about 10 more months, and we're going to hold him to it if he's right or wrong. About 10 more months before he's expecting we're going to have a world-level crash. Warren's annual letter that came out last weekend. In our search for new standalone businesses, key qualities we seek are a sensible business price or purchase price. That requirement proved a barrier to virtually all deals we reviewed in 2017. Indeed, price seemed to be almost irrelevant to an army of optimistic purchasers. In other words, if we're going to buy $10 bills for $5, we got to wait for them to go on sale. We can't buy $10 bills for $15 and do well. So that's what things are priced at. Ray Dalio runs the largest hedge fund in the world, smartest guy I know. He says we're at the end of an 85-year credit cycle. In other words, we're in for a big crash. This is Robert Shiller, who got the Nobel Prize, and a chart that he built that got him the Nobel Prize looks like this. When this chart gets into the red zone, you're in trouble in stocks, and they're going to go down. That's 1900 to 1920, stocks went nowhere. You get into the red zone, that's Black Tuesday, 1929. Stocks crumbled. Stocks got into the red zone and crumbled again in 1938. Stocks got up into the red zone in 1964 and then went nowhere for the next 20 years to 1983. Stocks got up in the red zone again in 2000 and crashed down 50%. And then they got in the red zone again in 2008 and crashed down 50%. And here's where we are now. We're actually higher than that. We're at 33. It's only been there 4 times in history, and we're back. Okay? This Trump effect, which is rallying these markets, is based on an illusion, according to Shiller. In other words, things are not as healthy as they seem right now. This is Warren Buffett in Forbes 2001. He said, the Wilshire Gdp Relationship, that is, the Wilshire is a really big block of stocks. It's the biggest index. Compared to the GDP, so if the Wilshire is $20 billion or 20 trillion, and GDP is 20 trillion, then the relationship is 100%. It's the same, okay? If the Wilshire is if the Wilshire is $10 trillion and GDP is $20 trillion, then the Wilshire is 50%, so the ratio would be 50%. So he's saying when that relationship falls to 70% or lower, buying stocks is likely to work very well for you, right? When it goes over 120%, it's not good. The relationship between price and value is skewed historically, all right? This is the Wilshire GDP. In the year 2000, it gets up over 120% and gets into the red zone and crashes. This is 2008, it gets up above 100% and crashes. And this is 2015, it gets up above 100%. And instead of crashing, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve, produced monetary policy that made it almost impossible to put your money anywhere else than the stock market. As a result, here's where we are today. Never been there in the history of the stock market. Nobody knows if it can continue to go up, but if it does, it'll be for a short term. We're in for a stock market crash big time. This is Professor Demardin at NYU. He's considered to be one of the best valuation experts in the world. He said, if interest rates approach 4%, the markets are very likely to crash. Interest rates are now approaching 3%. They've just come up from 1.6 a couple years ago, and they are moving toward 4. In other words, you guys are going to experience, as you walk out into the job market, a massive recession within the next couple of years. So you might want to take that under advisement. This is what Charlie said about this whole process, you guys, and then I'll shut up. A foreign correspondent was talking to me once, and he said, you don't seem smart enough to be so good at what you're doing. Do you have an explanation? Munger said, other people are trying to be smart. All I'm trying to do is be non-idiotic. That's all I try to do all day long is be non-idiotic. So how to walk your talk? Number 1, put your money where your mouth is. You got values, vote them with your money. Second, look for a fat pitch company. It's going to be a narrow number of companies in the world that you'll be able to understand well enough to own them. Next, know the 10 cap price. That means you need to know what owner earnings are as opposed to earnings, as opposed to free cash flow. They're a different thing. Know the 10 cap price, and then wait for Mr. Market to put it on sale, because these cycles occur with enormous regularity every 5 to 10 years. Last time I got into the market big time was 2009. Now I'm exiting the market, ready to go in again in a year or two. And finally, repeat this until you get rich, and that's just the truth. By the way, I wrote about this in 2005. I was riding a Harley up to Sturgis, South Dakota, and just writing over onto a blog. And at the end of this thing, I said, look, here's the thing. Everybody can do this stuff. It's not hard. You have to be willing to learn a few things. And I said, you just do it yourself, and you'll retire really nicely in a few years. In fact, get this. If you can save $500 a month, and you can learn this rule number one stuff, which is this kind of formula, you can retire in 15 years with $50,000 a year income for the rest of your life, which for a lot of you means, 35 years old and you're done. You don't have to work. You've got a permanent lifetime trust fund of your own building at $50,000 a year. So that's the message that was on the wind. You can do it. You really can. And if they started right then when they read that until now, and they put money away over these 13 years at $500 a month, and their rate of return was what those kids got out of Singapore, right, 10 years ago. They got that average rate of return. The account balance they'd have right now would be $525,000 starting with nothing, $500 a month, and an annual income of $115,000 a year. So I'll leave you guys with that, something to think about. It's doable, but you're going to have to learn something different than maybe you think about investing. I guess I'm all done. I want to thank you too very much, Marcy. It was really, really nice. Thanks very much for having me over here. You guys are great. Thank you.